Welcome, everyone. My name is Mary Eleanor Power. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for Dalhousie University's Faculty of Open Learning and Career Development. And I'm delighted to be here with our colleague Jorge, who I will introduce momentarily. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Dalhousie is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We're all treaty people. And I also want to recognize that African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. It's a little bit about where we're coming from, and I hope that you are all having an enjoyable day wherever you are joining us from for today's webinar. And now on to Jorge. Jorge, our speaker today, is a business administration professional with experience in various countries in the American continent, with an important exposure to the electricity industry. He currently resides in Brazil, where he got his sustainability MBA certificate and is an active participant in solar power technologies development in local communities as an independent consultant for projects that focus on energy transition and international certifications in CSR and sustainability. Jorge holds professional certificates in sustainable energy technologies and corporate social responsibility from the Foundational Technologies Institute, and has been an instructor for the respective courses at BlocksEDU since the beginning of 2020, supporting learners from different parts of the world with various cultural and professional backgrounds. And before I pass the microphone over to Jorge, I will just offer a few housekeeping notes. Firstly, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to add them in the chat, and we have set aside some time at the end to address those questions. Also, for those who appreciate the opportunity to go back and review content for a second and third time, we will be sending out an email before the end of the workday today with a link to the recording of the webinar, along with links to the courses and certificates that Jorge will be covering today. And as well, Jorge's email address will be included in that email, as well as at the end of this webinar, should you have any questions directly for him. If you would prefer to share your questions verbally, feel free to raise your hand and I would be more than happy to unmute you. And just a final note, we are delighted to be co-hosting today's webinar with our educational partner, BlocksEDU, and appreciate that we have a few people from BlocksEDU on the call today. So just want to acknowledge that partnership. And without further ado, thank you for bearing with me. Jorge, over to you, and thanks so much.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen here. Sorry. Just want to make sure that you can all see the presentation. Okay. I can't right now. I don't know what's happening. I just can't share my screen by some reason.
Sorry, you should be able to share it now, Jorge.
Yeah, I don't know why my view doesn't show up, my presenter view. We tried it. This is weird. Can I just come back? Oh yes, we have. Can I join back?
I imagine, yeah.
Just to see what's happening with that. just a second.
All right, so while we just wait for Jorge to join us back, and thanks, Ted, for flagging that. The link, I think that Jorge will just join us again. And so in the meantime, I will just offer a link to the corporate social responsibility course in the chat. If you wish to know more about that, the one that we offer and that is taught by Jorge. So that will be in the chat momentarily, along with a link to the Sustainable Energy Technologies certificate, which is a 3-course certificate. And all of our, so the CSR course, along with the Sustainable Energy Technology certificate, are all offered online and can be taken at your own pace. So Jorge is the instructor, but these are pre-recorded sessions. And so it offers you the flexibility of being able to take it at your own pace. Okay. Does anyone have any questions that we can answer right now? And you can certainly unmute if you would prefer to share your question verbally. I would be more than happy to unmute you if you just raise your hand. And the raising hand function should be at the bottom of your screen. So just where there are no questions and we're just waiting for Jorge to rejoin us. He was just having a technical difficulty, but we will get started here momentarily. I'll just walk you through the 3 courses that are part of the Certificate in Sustainable Energy Technologies. The first is Energy Fundamentals, and that, oh, here's Jorge. And then the second is Wind Energy Developers, and the third, Solar Energy Developers. And as I've said previously, all of those can be taken at your own pace. And each course is an average of 5 to 6 hours per week that you would expect to spend on the course. Again, you make your own schedule. Okay, Jorge, I'm glad we were able to sort out the technical difficulties. You're just muted there.
I'm muted. Okay.
There you
Is it
are.
working
Okay,
now?
wonderful. So over
Okay.
to you. And if you have any questions, then feel free to add them in the chat. Thanks, Jorge.
Thank you. So thanks everyone and welcome to this hour-long webinar. It's brought to you by Dalhousie University and BlocksEDU. We hope to meet your expectations on this session and of course support your decision about advancing your career in one of the most valuable manners that we currently know and that the professional world currently gives more attention to. So as Mary Eleanor was pointing out, I'm currently based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And since the pandemic hit in 2020 around here, I've been involved in projects, let's say, all over the eastern region of Brazil. And so these projects, they aim for assertively assessing the impacts of deploying solar energy generating facilities. And these are various sizes of facilities in specific areas and or communities in the country. And after assessing those impacts in the face of potential positive outcomes, we would determine and design educational programs for all the stakeholders involved in the projects. So of course, their execution wouldn't compromise the adherence of these projects to the sustainable development goals. So, well, I guess at this point, if I were attending the webinar, I'd be wondering why this person whose mother tongue clearly is not English and who's thousands of kilometers away is hosting a webinar at Dalhousie in Nova Scotia. So just to illustrate a bit better this, my interest, and let's say also the effort and the skills, and for working with this, within these areas, and with this global ambition that would take me to Canada or anywhere in the world, I gotta say that as a South American, I can see how relevant it is to study and work in a place like Brazil in terms of learning from the outside, bringing concepts in these disciplines, bringing them to the country and then sharing what the situation is from the inside. So what are we going through right now in countries like Brazil? And I'm sure in many countries currently we're going through huge crisis. And it's, I think that me being from South America, after spending some years abroad, I thought it was a good idea to just come back and try to bring all this experience from the outside and be able to also show how and design projects to impact globally from here. So, and of course, you know, Brazil, just as Canada, has semi-continental extension. It's huge. It has all sorts of natural resources and is a major economy in the world. So I guess there are many many things to relate to when we talk about the countries. Of course, culturally, it's quite different, and there are some other components. But of course, the impact of a country like Brazil and a country like Canada and the world's dynamics and the world's condition is huge. So, okay, I brought here the World Economic Forum Global Risks Report Perception Survey, and what I can see and what I think too is I'm totally convinced that the disciplines that we see here have to be adapted, and it's fundamental to have examples and benchmarking. So being this a global report, it's easy to see how many of these risks are present in our societies. And I want to clarify why when we use the term transition when we talk about these risks. And of course, these complex issues like environmental issues, global warming specifically, inequality in the world. So it's important that every actor in society, and when we say actor, we can also talk about countries, is really contributing to better the situation. We cannot solve these problems just by individuals. So we need organizations, nonprofits, and governments all working together, collaborating to make, of course, a more sustainable reality. So I want you to take a look at the graphic, at that top 10 risks graph. Of course, if someone wants to comment on it, I would love to hear your thoughts on the report. But I just want you to realize that most of the the biggest part of the risks that are in there are environmental. So we don't see, let's say, economical risks in that list. And this list doesn't surprise experts, but it should surprise us as citizens to see how we definitely have to transition our system, because we're not seeing economical problems in the next 10 years, or at least not being as important as environmental issues. So governments cannot ignore these issues anymore. Companies cannot do it anymore. And policies have to be made, policies have to be supported. Otherwise, no subsystem will be sustainable, of course, if there's no environmental sustainability. So first of all, we have to focus on this. If there was an option of stopping the evolution of this system, rewinding the history and then starting everything all over again, of course, I'm sure we would do that. But since there is no such thing and our system it's polluted and it's corrupted, we have to focus and do a good job in transitioning the system so we become actual agents of change. The system demands us to do business as agents of capitalism and as part of human organizations inside the system. So the very first challenge is to do business differently, taking part in tackling all the modern challenges that are possible to tackle. And then that's why it comes, CSR comes in the scenario. And so let's go to CSR. So what's in here for you? So we have the following learning outcomes. So of course, what we're expecting you to have by the end of the program has a main objective, and that one is to have a strong foundational understanding of what corporate social responsibility is and its scale across the globe. The idea is for us to walk you through tools for benchmarking social, environmental, and corporate governance. So the now very popular ESG, and also explain how effective CSR reporting can improve your organization, can improve your role in society, and for big corporations, in case you work for one, its chances of being listed in sustainability indices, and for professionals that work in this kind of corporations, this last characteristic can be quite important, because right now it can determine if the business will get the necessary investment flow it needs to operate properly and to get to its vision. So CSR is becoming a very important tool in that search. Through the second part of the course, the focus will be on methods for creating and improving the organization's own CSR strategy. And we will spend a good portion of time and of the program, of the second half of the program, on project and change management practices. Because that's another very important, we're talking about transitioning. So we need to know how to start this transition in projects and how to deal with the results that we keep getting through the processes. And lastly, we will investigate some of the most creative marketing approaches that are employed in this field of CSR and explore the ways that your organization or you as an entrepreneur can improve your image or the image of your company and the reputation through effective brand activism. So that's what we have for learning outcomes. And then I just want to make sure that we have some space for questions and comments from you. And I will have a couple more slides like this one through the webinar. So please feel free to make questions, to make comments. And of course, if I can answer your question or address your comment, I'll do it immediately. Otherwise, my colleagues from Dalhousie can jump in and do it on my behalf, or we will save those questions and comments and make sure to send a reply through the channels that you shared with us in the registration form. So before I take any questions or comments, I would like to make a couple questions here. And these are, do you have any thoughts on the idea of transitioning our socioeconomic system or transitioning some of the features that compose this system? And also, the second question would be, what's your previous knowledge of CSR and where does it come from? If someone has any comments or wants to participate, please go ahead. Or if someone has any questions, feel free to do them.
Yes, if anyone would like to raise their hand, you can certainly do that. I'll maybe jump in with a comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, if that's okay. My background is in mostly public relations and communications, and certainly the topic of corporate social responsibility. I remember when it was of greater focus, and I've since not followed the conversation around this, but I remember that it was required by companies to provide a CSR report or to have some kind of a reporting function if they were publicly traded. And I can't recall it, that might have been in the early 2000s, but just this idea that conversation around more transparency, well, I just found that really interesting, and from a communication standpoint, how that changed the narrative for a lot of companies, or forced them to, if they weren't already being kind of transparent about the responsibility that they had to, the planet, communities, etc. So right. That's kind of where my previous knowledge comes from, and exposure to CSR as a concept.
Awesome. I'm sure. Yeah, many of us have been through that. Maybe not as closely, but we have seen how it is required from corporations and companies to be transparent, and we still have big challenges in that sense. But the change that we've seen in terms of corporate responsibility is huge too. Like now we know many, we have access to a lot of information, and we know many things about the companies, what they do, even their mistakes or the things that they're not doing right, much as the things that they're doing well. And that's and having that information available is quite an asset for us to actually make the change, right? actually transition to a more just and sustainable society.
Mm. Yeah,
So when I'll just try and follow that idea, and we unfortunately we're still, even though we're seeing all these changes towards having more knowledge and towards being more capable of understanding the challenges, we're still victims of some selfish interests, right? And they come from, of course, the specific groups of people. It's not there's no way to specifically point who these groups are composed by, but we know that there are some powers that need us to be disinformed, like that they actually need societies to be ignorant in certain areas, and or if not ignorant, deceived, right? So that we don't take these things seriously. And maybe you've heard very recently, we found out that some oil companies had been making projections, and this scientists were making projections for these companies about global warming and about the use of oil and gas, and these companies hid the information for a long time, but they had the information that this would change, and this would make a rapid increase in global temperatures if we kept using oil and gas for most of our heating and powering necessities. And that's the thing, but those interests need to deceive us, so we as citizens don't get concerned about global warming. There's still people that don't believe in global warming, which is quite concerning as well. But it's, at the end, it's not necessarily their fault. It's part of what these interests need, right? And that's why I made the question, because I know, or in my experience, I know people that don't believe in climate change, and I know people that need to understand many of these concepts and need to get some knowledge, so they start realizing that not believing in that was just a plan that they never decided to be a part of, right? So we need people to actually understand this, realize how real it is, and how current it is. And of course, after that, after we accept some of these challenges, what are we going to do, right? So, as you said, first of all, CSR is a concept, or has been identified as a concept since the early 70s, and it has started gaining worldwide importance since the 90s, maybe. And by the beginning of this century, we started working as a society, working on standards for reporting this. So we have the ISO standards, and we have a CSR standard that complements, for instance, the environmentally responsible standard and the quality standard. So the thing is, once we know that we have a role in this, and that we are part of the problem and the solution, what knowledge do we need, and what are we going to do with it? I think there's a question.
Yeah, question from Euphenie.
Oh, that's right. So let's keep going here.
And
so
I'll just flag that maybe we'll respond to Euphemie's question at the end of your presentation, Jorge, if that's okay.
so yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
So CSR activities are broadly defined as everything a company does to create public value. And CSR concerns the idea that a company should be interested in and willing to help society and the environment, as well as be concerned about the products and the profits it makes. So of course, these actions can include charitable giving, sustainability practices. So think of renewable energy farms or efforts to improve environmental performance. And then we have employee volunteering, ethical governance, and responsible supply chain management, which all are part of this discipline. Why is it important? So just to point out some of the challenges that we have, and the challenges that the companies have to see that are present in our current society, is the environment, of course. What's the challenge about the environment? Why is it a challenge? So just to give you some statistics to see and characterize the scale of the challenge and of the problem that we have. First of all, we have pollution. And just to give you an example, almost 8 million tons of plastic waste flow and get dumped into the oceans every year from coastal regions. And to put this in perspective, that's the equivalent of, let's say, 5 grocery bags of plastic trash sitting on every foot of coastline around the world. And only about 9% of all plastic ever made has likely been recycled. So the issue of plastics it has passed through generations, and we keep manufacturing plastics. And since the year 2000, half of all plastic manufactured that we have in the world today has been manufactured since then. So it's not something that it's from past generations only. We are part of that issue too. And the way that companies produce and the way that they teach how to consume those products is taking us to a really dirty place. And we need companies to understand that this is also their concern. One example for deforestation, and the planet has an estimated of 15% of original forest cover. So we're talking about 85% that is all gone already. And there are ways to at least try to reverse or not reverse this, but try to keep and maintain this native forest, this original forests, and try to gain some or do some reforestation and get back to a better statistic. But of course, it's a difficult task. And for instance, in Brazil, unfortunately, in 2022, we had the worst deforestation rate in the last 15 years, unfortunately. We lost 10,500 square kilometers, devastated, totally devastated. And that's almost 20% of the area of Nova Scotia. So imagine not having a single native piece of land in a period of 5 years. That's how much Brazil lost in forest, in original forest. So unfortunately, we have to do something quick, and we have to move also politically to do these changes, and it comes from being conscious about these issues and about what we can do about CSR, what's our responsibility in it. Biodiversity, which is the most vital feature of the planet, and it's at great risk due to climate change, to pollution and deforestation as well. And according to WWF, human activity has wiped out 60% of mammals, birds, fish, and almost 69 in average of all species in the last 50 years. In North America, for instance, the number is quite small compared to Latin America and the Caribbean. North America has a loss of 20% since it's been recorded, and Latin America and the Caribbean has 94% loss of its biodiversity, which is absolutely mind-blowing and super concerning, and that's why we have to do something. So imagine if losing that 60 to 70% of biodiversity is like a decline in human population if you took and emptied North America, South America, Africa, Europe, and China all together. So that's how many individuals and communities that are gone. And finally, water. Oops, sorry. That's on me. And water, the issue that we have right now is that many parts of the world face major challenges due to limited freshwater availability, and a significant amount of that freshwater resources in the world are already contaminated by pollutants from industry and farming. So to give an example, each year 1.2 trillion gallons of untreated sewage, stormwater, and industrial waste are dumped into the United States only. So we're talking about quite a huge amount of pollutants in just one specific country. And in developing countries, the situation is even worse, where there's an estimation of 70% of industrial waste is dumped untreated into waters and into consumable water, which is, it jeopardizes the environment and of course the health of the people that are consuming this water. And society, another big challenge for our current system. We have huge issues, and this list of course doesn't even get close to have something realistic as in terms of the amount of items that we could find, but we have to feel compelled to create this public value for societies because we have great issues. And just to give some examples, according to Oxfam and Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report, in 2021, the world reaches 1%. So people, or individuals and organizations with more than $1 million, they own 47.8% of all the world's wealth. So, and this grew, this is a 3% point growth from what was happening in the previous year. And so the pandemic just showed us that inequality is a huge problem for our communities, and that we have to do something to make sure that resources are available for everyone. And of course, this made some consumers, not all of us, but to start seeking companies that take more proactive approaches to improving communities where they operate and conditions of their internal operation and their day by day. So hopefully we can work on some of these challenges. We have, of course, corruption, bribery, tax evasion, and that's costing developing countries like Brazil. It's costing more than like 1.25 trillion US dollars per year. So that's a lot of money. We have unethical practices. So let's say we can talk about only 20% of factories globally are fully compliant with worker health and safety. And then we have, other than having this challenge in health and safety, we have issues with workplace harassment, for instance. And these are things that we have to look at. And survey in Canada showed for 2016 that 90% of women and 13% of men reported workplace harassment. So that's a huge, for a country that's considered developed and that's considered to have a really good quality life index. It's a huge problem, and imagine what it is in other countries that are not as privileged. So why do businesses, sorry, why should they care about addressing these social and environmental issues? And especially when they don't see that improves their bottom line. So actually, research shows that it does improve their bottom line. And here are some areas that gain the most strong CSR investments from a company. So we have talent recruitment. So recent studies have found that 97% of the MBA graduates from 11 North American and Europe's top business schools were willing to forego financial benefits to work for an organization with a better reputation for corporate social responsibility and ethics. So they were putting CSR and ethics before money, which is quite an interesting idea. And this new generation of graduates just think differently about employers right now, and it keeps changing. We have an employee retention, so turnover has been found to be reduced by up to 50% in companies where CSR is fully integrated into operations. Customer loyalty, so studies that have been published, and one specifically, Better Business Journey, in 2018 found that 88% of consumers were more likely to buy from a company that engages in activities that improve society. So that's also a very important area. And well, I could go through the other ones, but I don't want to be as extensive in this, but there are specific incentives, and it's quite important for companies to address them and to identify, of course, them. How do we report CSR? How do we do it, and what do we do with it? Yes, I have a poll for this slide. So can you?
Do you want me to pull it up there, Jorge?
Yes, please. Or do I have it here? There you go.
So we're asking, with what terms are you familiar? So
That's right.
Do any of these look familiar to you?
So do we have?
So race to zero, and you feel free to, you can choose multiple terms if there's more than one that is familiar to you. I'll just wait another minute here.
Sure.
And Jorge, there just are 2 questions.
Yep.
And so I'm wondering if we're able to move along to perhaps sustainable energy technologies in the time that we have left so that we can
Yes.
address the questions.
Yes.
That would
For
be
sure.
wonderful. Okay, I'm just going to end the poll and share the results. So it looks like really there's just familiarity with one term, race to zero. So lots of room for learning, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
And just so you know, these are referencing sources for sustainability reporting. And in this program, what we'll do is strive to give you the tools necessary to identify which of these frameworks and references is more valuable for your current situation as a citizen or as a part of an organization. So you can use, please, first of all, understand what it is, understand what it is composed of, and then know which one works better for you or for your company. So that's another tool that we offer by the end of the program. I'll just a quick to finish, just a quick look at why are we offering this program. So just the planet needs it, right? We shouldn't be doubting that the way our system currently works is not sustainable. And the only way to start changing direction is by generating social responsibility through education and eventually through cultural adaptation. So we know that next generations won't be able to repair the damages if we keep feeding the same vicious cycle. The market's growing, CSR is evolving, and there's a need for training. There currently exists a gap in formal training for CSR. So we have large companies with CSR branches, but not many schools provide certifications in CSR. So the professionals are not necessarily able to get into this industry or get into these practices as easily as it could be if we didn't have this gap. Okay, I'll just go straight to.
And maybe while you're doing that, I'll pose a question here. So came in anonymously. So the person says, good to see organizations moving toward a balance of people, planet, profit, and purpose. So my question is, what types of jobs are available?
Do you want me to answer to that right now, or can we?
Sure, you can answer that at any time, Jorge, whether now or
right. I'm just a bit concerned about the time, of course,
sure.
And just to go through the set. But then I'll if you can keep that question for me for the end, I'll gladly do it. So sustainable energy technology. So what's in here for you as a learner? Some of the learning outcomes here. So this program provides an introduction to sustainability and green technologies, the relation between sustainable energy technologies and what we have been talking through the webinar. And it demonstrates why energy innovations are necessary for the future of our planet. So learners will be introduced to different types of clean energy, such as wind, solar power, hydroelectricity, some geothermal energy, tidal, and amongst others. And then we'll also learn about how advances in this, in energy and in energy storage technologies are making these systems more economically smart, and how advances in other industries that are intertwined with this one, such as electrical transportation, electric vehicles, are going to increase the demand for new energy sources. So understanding all of this and how can we implement these clean energy technologies is basic for understanding how these can work either in conjunction with or as a replacement for conventional power sources. Knowing that conventional power sources are the biggest pollutants and responsible for a huge amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and then a huge part of the global warming that we're experiencing right now. So once those fundamentals are guaranteed, let's say, and based on that understanding of the industry and the technological advances that guide it, we make sure learners have the tools necessary to evaluate and compare sustainable energy projects through financial assessments, so they identify the best ways to fund and execute these projects. Also, we'll give you the tools on how to adapt these projects to the current economical context, and also to identify specifically barriers and incentives in each, in this case, in Canada and each province, but it works the same for Brazil and for most of the countries, which barriers and incentives, policies and related situations or related contexts are there for renewable energy technologies. And by the end of it, just the course will make sure that you have the tools to describe the steps for managing projects in these technologies, not necessarily with a specific technical background or like a hands-on experience, but yet having the project management part of it clear enough for you to just be part of any project related to sustainable energy. Just to understand a little bit of the current situation of these technologies. So as you can see in the chart, additions of wind and bioenergy capacity have been quite stable. Hydropower has been reducing up a bit, and the primary reason of that is because there was a huge growth of hydropower a couple decades ago, or more than a couple decades ago. But then we have the growth in solar and in specifically solar, and some of course trying to keep the wind steady and to make it grow. But the thing is that 55% of this growth was all solar, and that's very important because that's a good point to focus when trying to identify which industry has the biggest potential, but also what industry will get to its top the sooner, right? So in this course, we talk about how for instance, how solar growth is a good opportunity for industries, for countries, for companies, but also the caution that we have to have with an industry that's growing so fast. Then we have here renewable capacity by country. So of course, China here has a huge participation. So it's almost 32% of the renewable investment in 2018. And it leads the production of, for instance, solar panels. So what is it in there for us being in Canada or being in South America? What is it in there to understand from these statistics? So we go through that and we try to show what are the opportunities, but also what are the threats that this can bring in terms of global totals and global capacity potential. So what we see here is that like all the growth and investments in renewable electricity start to add up. Renewables keep representing more than a third of the world's installed capacity for electricity production, and more than 26% of global electricity produced. And those stats are very important in terms of where do we need to grow more and where do we have to focus in, right? And those are topics that we go over during the course, so learners understand where are the biggest opportunities, and not only in terms of industry, but in terms of countries, in terms of territories.
That might be actually a good opportunity, Jorge, just to pause for a moment, also just recognizing our time as well. Might this be a good opportunity just to, I think, highlight some of the job opportunities or just what you're seeing in the industry in terms of what people can do with either the sustainable energy technologies certificate or the course in CSR.
So okay, so the question that was made, right? So we have, so right now we have all sort of project management opportunities in these projects or in these companies. We have the focus on environmental footprint and environmental assessments. So once you have professional training in sustainable energy technologies and of course CSR as well, you can be able to work, for instance, for projects that are related with carbon offsets. So being able to quantify or being able to be part of projects to quantify carbon emissions and then quantify as well the impact of using sustainable energy technologies to make that offset to offer also carbon credits for other companies. And there are huge opportunities in that area of work. Of course, we have technical professionals and people that want to grow their career, and they need just the project management skills to go and move from their hands-on job to something more let's say in a more of an execution position, right? So there are of course many companies, and as I said, production, electrical cars, production of electrical components, and being able to understand where all this work is going in terms of how does this impact communities, how does this impact the economy, how does this impact political contexts, and then so trying to, or being able to manage all this information and be able to focus it towards specific results. So as I said, there are many opportunities, job opportunities in these areas, and specifically in Canada, and this is something that I just want to show here, and I'll just go to it quick, and it's just take a look at this graphic here, and it's how much these technologies have grown in Canada. So you need people to install this, right? These big wind farms or these solar arrays. You need people to do the maintenance. You need people to plan for them. You need people to go and interact with the communities to see how, or to show them how this will bring benefits to them. You'll need people to understand policies and to understand public relations to be able to take these projects and make them successful and make them profitable, right? So, and there are many opportunities. And of course, this is just an overview, and also just to show this one last piece. This is just a map showing the biggest wind farms right now in Nova Scotia. But Nova Scotia's growth in renewable generation is huge, and there are like more than 300 commercial wind turbines generating electricity throughout the province. So there's a need for labor. There is a need for new projects, for new ideas, and there's a need for, of course, integrating all of this with CSR and all of this with companies that are already doing their work, right? Yeah, I guess, do we have more time?
Certainly we can open the floor to any questions. I know that we're at our time of the hour, but if there are any questions that people have, feel free to add them in the chat. But I do just want to reemphasize, I suppose, that the email that will be sent out later today. And this was such an informative webinar, Jorge. Thank you very much. And if there are questions, then people can reach out to you directly, and your email address will be there.
Absolutely.
And so I would encourage people to do that as well. They can rewatch today's webinar and share it with colleagues. So if there's anything that you want to rewatch or share, you can certainly do that as well. Are there any final points that you wanted to raise, Jorge, before we wrap up?
Sure. And so just to make sure that people understand why these areas are so important right now. And it's the world and most of the countries that are members of the United Nations, they have agreed upon this specific goals, right? And when you see that here, and just looking at these goals and looking at our advances, or unfortunately some of them have not advanced, but at the pace that we're going in our society, we can see that citizens and people themselves have to understand the value of this, and have to understand what this means for next generations, right? And what this means for human activity itself, so we can push for bigger movements in the area, right? So politically, if we are educated in CSR, if we are educated in the transition for sustainable technologies, we can push political movement towards it. We can push our own companies to do something about it, and that will bring us more opportunities for us, like in terms of work, right? Because we will be able to ask for these policies to change, for these initiatives to start and to be executed, and then we'll have the chance to be part of those initiatives. So, well, hopefully, yes, it was informative enough, and I just want people to make sure that these programs go hand by hand. They can be taken independently, but there's a strong need for professionals to understand this, to be knowledgeable, and we hope that you take that step, that each one of you takes that step and grows their career in terms of these disciplines. So thank you so much, and hopefully, well, we have done our job here.
Thank you, Jorge. This is great. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. As I said at the beginning, we'll be sending around an email later today with a recording that will be hosted on our YouTube channel, along with Jorge's email and links to the courses that he gave us an overview on today. So thanks again. And thanks to our educational partner, BlocksEDU, for being part of today's webinar as well. And take care, everyone, and all the best. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.